Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me today, Lori Goldman, on For the Sake of the Argument. My guest today was a candidate for Senate District 1, Justin Onwenu. And I wanted to make sure I pronounced his name right because it's spelled Onwenu. And he said, just remember, on the way with new leadership, clever. And he talked a lot that backed up what he stands for. I hope you'll listen to this episode. I hope you'll tell your friends about this and they'll listen. And you can catch me and For the Sake of the Argument on all social media platforms. Thanks for joining us today. Justin Onwenu, thank you so much for coming today on For the Sake of the Argument. You are currently the Detroit Director of Small Business Affairs.
Yep.
Right? And you're running for Michigan's first Senate district, and I want you to tell us what areas that covers.
So State Senate District 1 includes Wyandotte, Lincoln Park, River Rouge, Ecorse, and Detroit. So Detroit and downriver.
My old stomping grounds. You know, I was born and raised in Ecorse.
Yep.
I still love it. I still go down there once a week for a regular card game.
I love it. We got to get you out there on the doors, too.
Oh, my God. Well, you know, I probably still know a lot of people that live there, so that's very cool. How do you feel your experience working for the city of Detroit as Director of Small Business Affairs has prepared you for state government?
Yeah, so working as the City of Detroit's Director of Small Business Affairs, but I actually got my start as a community organizer in Southwest Detroit, 48217, River Rouge, and Ecorse, some of the most heavily polluted zip codes in the whole state. And so my career from organizing to now working in economic development for the city has all been about neighborhood development. How do we make sure that neighborhoods have what they need, whether it's small businesses, clean air and clean water, housing, transit, so that they can thrive? And so in my role as Director of Small Business Affairs under Mayor Sheffield, we've been working really hard to support small businesses. And that means getting them, the grants and capital that they need to survive and thrive in neighborhoods. Part of the reason why I'm running is really a focus on neighborhood investment. And so I think that's transit, housing, small businesses, making sure that workers are taken care of. And I think that work at the local level, I'm hoping to extend that and do that work at the state level as well.
That's remarkable. Having grown up in Ecorse, familiar with River Rouge, Wyandotte, you know what? We're kind of at the mercy of the big companies like Great Lakes Steel when they were operating. When I was younger and lived in Ecorse, we used to wake up and we could walk outside and we'd have graphite dust, sparkling on our bodies and on our cars.
Yep.
We never thought if it was good or bad for us. So places like that, those communities downriver especially, and Detroit, are so beautifully located on the Detroit River.
Yes.
They have so much to offer. Mm-hmm. So somebody that comes into an office like you that can really impact the lives of the people living there is a godsend.
And I think it's needed now. We are facing so many different points of tension between fight for environmental justice, fight for economic development and jobs, fight for workers and labor. And I think this district encapsulates just how important fighting for all three is.
Yeah, environmental justice is always on the back burner. Jobs and the desires of the very wealthy and powerful come first all the time. So I'm glad to hear that you're going to stand up for the rights of those that might not have a voice.
Absolutely.
What would be your first priority if you're elected to the Michigan Senate?
Yeah, so I'm really running on three things. Number one is to make Michigan more affordable. So to me, that means housing, utility, healthcare, and auto insurance costs. Number two is neighborhood investment. We need to make sure that we're making neighborhoods livable. So that means making safer communities. That means investing in housing and transit, lowering property taxes. And then the third is really cleaning up our government to be more ethical. I think ethics, especially at the national level, has been sort of front and center as a huge issue. And I think at the state level, we haven't made the amount of gains that I'd like to see on just our transparency and ethics ratings. And so ethics reform, I think, is going to be my number one priority because it allows so many other issues that we care about to move forward. All of the issues that we're facing on affordability, on fighting for small businesses and not giving billions of dollars of taxpayer money away just down the drain to big corporations that don't need it, fight for environmental justice. All of this work, I think, has ethics at its core. If we can't improve our campaign finance system, make sure that our politicians are working for us and not for other folks, then all the other work is going to be more difficult. And so ethics and transparency reform, making sure that Michigan is one of the most ethical and effective state governments in the country, is one of my top priorities.
That's good to hear. I think voters are very much in need and demand that from our elected officials, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. We want you to say what you mean and mean what you say, even after you get in office. So you have a contested primary ahead of you for this seat.
Yep.
Abraham Ayash, your competitor, was on this show a few episodes ago. What makes you the better choice for Senate District 1?
Yeah, so, Abe and I have known each other for many, many years. We actually, were knocking doors for Bernie in 2020. I was a Bernie Sanders delegate in 2020.
Really?
And so him and I have known each other for a long time, have a lot of respect for him. I do think we're different leaders. So I think one of the issues in our progressive movement is oftentimes we look at only issues. So if we took a questionnaire and asked each other 20 questions, I'm sure we would have a lot of similarities on where we stand on environmental justice, criminal justice reform, economic justice, et cetera, et cetera. I think one of the things that we have to think about as a movement is what types of styles of leadership and who can build the sort of coalitions we need to get that progressive policy passed. And so for me, I come from a local government background. I am experienced in local community organizing. And I've already built the sort of coalitions that I think we're going to need at the state level to deliver for workers, to deliver for neighborhoods, to deliver for all of us. So what do I mean by that? So this district is Detroit and Downriver. I've been able to secure the support of vast majority of Downriver mayors and city council members in this district, as well as the majority of city council in Detroit. And so when I think about so many of the issues that we're facing, it's protecting our communities in the face of this crazy Trump federal administration. That is a very local, boots on the ground issue. When I think about all of the laws that need to change at the state level to better position Detroit to do well, that's going to take folks who know how to build coalitions with local leadership. And when I think about the movement work that we need to do in fighting for economic, environmental, social, racial justice, I think I'm well positioned to build those coalitions because I've had background in organizing work, whether it's working for the Sierra Club, working for One Fair Wage, the UAW. I've done a lot of that work. And so I think I am better positioned as a coalition builder, as a messenger. I'll also mention that this district was really redrawn because of a Voting Rights Act lawsuit. And so this is a district that I feel more strongly rooted in, that I think I'll be able to build the coalitions needed to deliver on the things that he and I both care about. But all respect to him, excited for the race. I think, it's a two-person race and excited to win this thing.
Okay. If you are elected, what would you do to curb the corrupt influence of DTE in Michigan politics?
So I mentioned I got my start as an organizer. I think, because I am working for city government now, I'm the director of small businesses, that gets obscured sometimes. My roots really are in organizing. I got my start standing up to some of the most powerful interests and polluters in our state. So Marathon, the only oil refinery in the state of Michigan, went head-to-head with them. DTE worked with the community to get millions of dollars from DTE invested directly into community priorities. So for me, I think I am well-positioned as a new voice, as a new leader in this community to stand up. And for me, standing up means lowering utility costs in a time when we have record inflation. We have some of the highest levels of wealth inequality in generations. I think we need to make sure that we push forward an affordability agenda, and that starts with utilities, of course. Senator Kevin Curtail is pushing a bill that would ensure that rate increases, rate hikes aren't happening on a yearly basis. It's one of the motivations behind legislation that former Rep. Ayash has pushed. I think that's a priority for me as well. So lowering utility costs, of course, through DTE is one of the priorities, but also tackling other price hikes that we've seen on water utilities, on housing, on transportation. But as I mentioned, ethics reform has to come first because it allows us to tackle all of the things that we care about on utility affordability, on environmental justice, and on so many issues.
The utilities, DTE in particular, are trying to get these data farms everywhere. And do you agree that the people have a right to have a voice in whether these things come to fruition or not?
Absolutely. So one of my biggest frustrations, it being in the environmental movement, I saw that oftentimes there was this tension between our desire for clean energy and local communities that maybe had different feelings about where things should be sited and located. We're seeing those same fights show up in this data center fight. Abdul Al-Sayed, Mallory McMorrow, some other folks have released frameworks that I think are strong and that Michigan should lead on. So what does that mean? That means if you're a data center, we need to make sure that there are union workers, union jobs that are being created. Oftentimes, there are these big numbers about the number of jobs that are created, and we oftentimes see those jobs shipped out to folks who are not unionized, folks who are not in our state. So we need a union jobs guarantee. We need to make sure that utility rates aren't being passed on to consumers. So if you're an out-of-state company coming into Michigan and then passing all of the costs on to Michiganders, I think that's a problem. And then lastly, these should be cited where the communities are asking for them or where they would like them, not above and sort of pushing aside community needs and community requests. And so community benefits, as we've seen in Detroit, that has worked in many cases. Community benefits agreements, I think, should be the baseline for some of these projects as well. I will say, I think our economic development strategy from SOAR to other things that have been going on for the past, many, many years.
What's SOAR stand for again?
So this is the economic development strategy of the state to, we're going to give you X amount of taxpayer dollars. We're going to hope that you bring X number of jobs. I think that strategy is outdated in many ways. I really want to see us think about small businesses, neighborhoods, people as drivers of economic growth. When we invest in people, that means higher wages, that means pathways to entrepreneurship. That means that is a framework for economic growth that I think Democrats should be pushing forward, and not just, hey, we'll give you a tax break and hope for the best, which I think has been our strategy going back for many generations.
I like that you mentioned, single business owners, entrepreneurship. The days of people working at Ford Motor Company for their whole career and feeling secure there are over.
Yep.
So that's even more important. I'm glad you mentioned that.
It's over. Yep.
You previously were an organizer for One Fair Wage, the ballot initiative. In Michigan, which passed in the legislature in 2018,
Yep.
only to be gutted by a bipartisan group of lawmakers in early 2025.
Yep.
And I think there were six Democrats that crossed over to vote against that, and they know who they are. How they sleep at night, I don't know. Did that feel like a betrayal from your perspective? And what more needs to be done to help workers?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So I mentioned I got my start as an organizer.
And you know what? You should explain about One Fair Wage.
Yes,
what does that mean to you? What was it?
A couple of things. So got my start as an organizer in the environmental justice space, went to law school, started focusing a lot more on labor issues. So I actually worked for the UAW, was a UAW member, worked for SCIU, and then started working for One Fair Wage. One Fair Wage is a movement to raise the minimum wage nationally, which hasn't been raised in far, far too long. We know that it costs way more than the minimum wage to actually put a roof over your head, provide for your family, et cetera. The sub-minimum wage, which is the minimum wage allowed for tip workers and service workers, is $2.13. And so One Fair Wage is a movement to say we need to raise the minimum wage for all workers. And so I actually remember when, collecting signatures, seeing folks fight for this higher minimum wage, only for it to be gutted by Republicans through this adopt and amend strategy. So they adopted the law so that it wouldn't be on the ballot, and then they ended up gutting it. Fast forward, there was this huge legal fight, ended up in the Michigan State Supreme Court to say whether adopt and amend, whether that strategy that Republicans employed was lawful. I was taking the bar exam in Michigan in Lansing when that decision came down. I remember I was, checking my phone in the middle of the sort of break period and probably should have been focused on taking the bar exam, but I was working for One Fair Wage, really trying to raise the minimum wage, and was so excited to see that the state Supreme Court had made One Fair Wage and all the work that Mothering Justice did around paid leave.
Which was the people's will.
Yep, which was the people's will. There's polling on it, there's signatures. I mean, this was really popular. And then there started to be this sort of backlash from some of the corporate interests to say, well, let's hold our horses. And what ended up happening is a bipartisan majority of folks gutted that law, undermined that law. And it was really frustrating to me because here we are, Democrats need to do popular things has been one of the refrains that you'll hear from across the spectrum of our party. And minimum wage increases is probably the most popular thing that you can do, one of the most popular policies that you can pass. And we were not just Democrats, but Republicans as well, sort of walk back and undermine that law. And so for me, organizing for One Fair Wage, helping do the legal research and legal strategy work with One Fair Wage, that to me was one of the biggest motivators for why I said, okay, I'm going to run for office, because we can't have Democrats signing on to bills to undermine workers. And so for me, I think workers' rights is a top priority. I teach workers' rights law, teach labor law now, I've come out of One Fair Wage as well, and want to make those issues a top priority in the state.
Thank you. Thank you. There have been rumors of former APAC staffers supporting your campaign. To set the record straight, are you receiving campaign assistance from any APAC-aligned either individuals or organizations?
I'm happy to say no. So that rumor, I have built coalitions my entire life, from being an environmental justice organizer, labor organizer. I have sought both the support of the Michigan Democratic Jewish Caucus and MGAGE, the largest Muslim advocacy organization in the nation. This campaign has received over 50 endorsements, including from some of the most progressive organizers and some of the more moderate members of our coalition. And so I have yet to receive, and I say yet because I have not and will not receive PAC checks. I haven't received any corporate donations. And for me, building coalitions both in the Jewish community, and there may be folks who have federal policies and international politics that may not align with me, and as well as within the Muslim community that may have politics that I agree with or don't agree with. I'm running a state campaign focused on state and local issues, not focused on international issues. So I can say no, but I can also say I've raised over $100,000, haven't received a corporate PAC check or any of the support that I think that goes against my values.
And no dark money?
No.
Okay, that's the money that we can't track.
Exactly.
That people, a lot of politicians say, I don't get any PAC money, but they don't talk about that.
Yeah.
Thanks for clearing that up.
And I will say the dark money in our politics, I think, needs to be a top priority. So there are a trillion different types of accounts that politicians in Lansing have used to accept money. And I think for me, we need more transparency. There are a lot of folks who are running for Secretary of State, who are running for Attorney General, who've made these corner pieces of their campaign. I think that's important. But I'll just say for me, I'm going to build coalitions across the spectrum of our party. I've gotten the support of folks like, Michelle Diedrichs, who's the co-founder of Our Revolution, folks like Andy Levin, and also more moderate members of our coalition of our party. So I'm going to be focused locally, going to be focused on the issues that I mentioned, and happy to build that coalition to win.
Trump has caused a lot of chaos, as we all know. He's gone after Medicaid, our bridges, most recently, crazy shit that is. He sent ICE into Detroit. What can the state legislature do to better resist Trump? Please have an answer.
Yes. That would be an awkward question for me to short circuit and not have an answer for. There are a couple of things. So on immigration, my family, this is personal for me. So my dad actually immigrated from Nigeria to Detroit in his early 20s. Half of my family, same background. My mom's side of the family has been in Detroit for generations. And so for me, I really want to be somebody who can bridge communities and fight for immigrant communities that we haven't seen that level of fight that we need to. On ICE and on immigration in particular, we can protect especially safe and vulnerable locations. So schools, hospitals, churches. We're seeing numbers of folks who are going to school, engaging in small businesses. All those numbers are plummeting because people are afraid they're going to get picked up and sent to a land that they don't know. So there are state government bills that are on the floor right now, so led by Senator Kavanaugh, Senator Chang, and some other folks that I think we really need to see supported, if not this year, then certainly when I get in office. So immigration is one. But we also need to push back. Our voting rights are under attack. Now, I think the linkage between what we're seeing from ICE and federal agents and voting rights can't be understated. I think Donald Trump wants to use that as a precursor and as a sort of shield for attacking our voting rights. We can push back. So the Michigan Voting Rights Act still hasn't passed. We need to pass that. So on immigration, we need to protect sensitive locations. On voting rights, we need to pass the Michigan Voting Rights Act. And
who's holding that up? Is it all on the Republican side?
It's on the Republican side.
Okay.
Yep. I think it should have gotten done when Democrats held control, but
you think?
That,
really? Good idea.
Yeah, good idea. And I will say that is a huge motivator for me. Now, I think there were a lot of amazing things done in our trifecta. I want to see Democrats elected up and down the ballot. But we also need Democrats who know how to deliver, who know how to build coalitions, even when it's difficult to actually get things done.
Yes.
And so I want to see that on immigration. I want to see that on our voting rights, on the Michigan Voting Rights Act. but also our jobs. We are seeing Donald Trump skyrocket prices. He said, when he was campaigning, it was all about affordability, and then he gets elected, and now he doesn't know what affordability even means. He says it's Democratic hoax. We can push back. So I mentioned the biggest drivers of this affordability crisis right now. It's utilities, it's housing, it's medical cost, it's auto insurance costs, and we need to have state-specific and local-specific plans to address that. And I do. And so excited to push back on the harm that Donald Trump is causing to our economy as well through that.
All right. Listen, Mary Sheffield was just elected Detroit's mayor.
Yeah.
Were you excited by that?
I was really excited about that.
What makes you most excited?
I think for me, when people ask me where I am politically, I've always found it difficult to answer because I was a Bernie Sanders delegate. I worked for the Sierra Club, but I also worked for the UAW. I teach labor law, but I also am the city of Detroit's director of small businesses. So I think within our progressive movement, having someone who can build coalitions, who has a clear vision and agenda, but knows that we need to bring people together even when it's difficult to get that done. And so for me, I see myself in her politics. I am progressive. I've always been rooted in community and neighborhoods. And I think we need to bring people together in order to get that done. So that means bringing business owners who believe that we should have a higher minimum wage to the table. It means bringing the labor movement who also understands that their workers have to go to healthy environments. Bringing, environmental justice advocates who also understand that people need good jobs in order to be able to thrive. And so for me, I see in Mary Sheffield's leadership real stability, but also just a groundedness in people in the community. I'll say one of the things that make me excited to run this campaign and hopefully to serve in Lansing is I want to be that bridge between Detroit and Lansing. I think, having the support of the majority of our city council, our county executive, coming out of Mayor Sheffield's administration, I think positions me to be that advocate for Detroit on so many issues. So on housing, we need to see more home repair dollars. We need to see the $600 million that Detroiters were overtaxed. We need to see relief on that front. We need to lower property taxes. These are priorities that Mayor Sheffield has, but there's so many other priorities that I think we need to focus on around jobs, around ethics reform, and so many other issues that are going to be top of the menu next year.
I like that you mentioned that. As a very hardworking realtor, 7 days a week,
yes,
every day of the year, I work with a lot of people trying to find affordable housing and leases in Detroit. And those prices, you cannot find a lease in Detroit, no matter how run down the building, how old the building, how infested the building, under $1,000. That's kind of the benchmark now, the lowest level.
Yep.
I hope that she will pay attention to the neighborhoods, like I think that Duggan didn't. We always celebrate all the rebirth of Detroit downtown, but the school districts and the neighborhoods, I think, have been just left behind.
I will say I actually first met Mayor Sheffield as an organizer. She was fighting water shutoffs in the neighborhoods. Then, I was working for SEIU. She was one of the leaders on some of the work that SEIU was doing on the industry standards boards. I've seen both her leadership for many, many years and feel confident. But I think she and other folks locally and at the county level will need partners in Lansing, not just folks who will go to Lansing and have their own agenda and say, I'm fighting for Detroit, but people who really know what the priorities are. And for me, neighborhood investment is a top priority, and I understand what that means viscerally in so many ways. I didn't mention this, but my family background really grounds me. My granddad actually worked for the city of Detroit under Mayor Coleman Young and Dennis Archer. My dad's side of the family, my dad actually was a small business owner and taught in Detroit public schools. And so for me, these neighborhood issues around investing in our schools, investing in our communities, housing, transit, these are really personal for me, and I'm excited to fight for them in Lansing.
Oh, I like hearing that.
Yes.
What are the best food spots in Detroit or in or out of your Senate District 1?
I think Senate District 1 has the best food in the state. I won't even hesitate on that. Taqueria El Rey in Southwest Detroit. If you're listening, I love you. Thank you for hosting me probably every other day, way too much. They went through a fire a couple of years ago. They have reopened in Southwest Detroit. Still the best Mexican food.
Where are they located? Like what street? Do you remember?
Now you're going to get me in trouble. But they relocated. They had an old location. You could smell the barbecue chicken. And so love that spot. But also Baobab Fair. Really great East African food. Love that spot. And Layla was a good spot downtown
yeah.
too. That I
high
love.
end, but delicious.
We got the full spectrum
That's
in District
right.
1.
A wardrobe
Yeah.
of choices. All right, last question. Best sports team in Detroit.
The Lions. And the fact that G-Mac Cash's The Lions Won Again song is in the back of my head, I think is indicative. I think the Pistons, of course, are doing really well now, but I'll say the Lions.
Justin Onwenu, thank you for being here on For the Sake of the Argument.
Thanks so much for having me.